The original W1 from Haylou was a real budget TWS trailblazer back when it was released over 2 years ago now. It's one of those few sets under $50 where you get a hybrid driver configuration of a single dynamic driver and a Knowles balanced armature. Today we're going to be taking a look at its successor, the W1 ANC. From the name, you can probably guess what they've added. We'll be seeing how it fares compared to other sub $50 options on the market, and as always we'll be taking a look at frequency response measurements, real life call samples, and a walkthrough of the Haylou Sound app. The W1 ANC have just been released and you can pick them up from AliExpress for approximately $37. You've got two colour options, all black or white and silver. The latter is definitely more aesthetically pleasing. The original had crispy and detailed trebles, but it was devoid of any real dynamic performance in the lower frequencies. To try and remedy that on this version, they've upgraded to a 10mm dynamic driver this time and have incorporated electronic dynamic crossover. They've upgraded from 4 to 6 mics to help deliver that up to 45 dB adaptive active noise cancellation. They're IPX4 water and sweat resistant, and you're getting up to 35 hours of battery life. The unboxing experience with the W1 ANC is loud and garish, and it does have a little bit of a budget feel to it. The only feature Haylou mentioned on the front is the premium sound quality. On the back, they're giving you most of the key parameters, including a lot of those that we mentioned in the intro. In the box, you're getting a mini user guide in English and Chinese. You're also getting a very basic USB A to C charge cable and 2 sets of replacement tips in small and large. The case design is quite simple. It's a kind of two-tone effect where you've got a glossy finish on top and a matte finish on the bottom. And as you'll see close up, there's already a few scuff marks where it hasn't stood the test of time particularly well in my pocket. After just 2 weeks in the pocket, you can already see those scuff marks that don't look especially aesthetically pleasing. The shiny bit on the top doesn't look quite as worn, but it does suffer with finger marks. It's a shame because on the day of arrival it did look like a very smart compact case, measuring just 63mm by 49mm by 28mm and weighing just over 40 grams means it's ideal for just popping in your pocket when you're out and about. Built into the front of the case is a red, amber, green style battery LED indicator. Whilst obviously useful, I found this only came on when you replace the buds back inside the case, something worth bearing in mind. And on the side you've got a button to reset the pairing records. When it comes to budget stem based TWS, in that kind of Apple AirPod Pro style design, there aren't too many innovations that you can introduce to differentiate when it comes to the looks department. The black version is shiny throughout, matching the top section of the case, with the Haylou logo screen printed in dark grey along the side of the stem. The branding is very subtle, but I find that this version is a little bit more generic looking than the white and silver. The stem length is about average, measuring just under 32mm. These dimensions are quite similar to the Soundpeats Air 4 Pro, but the W1 ANC are shorter than the Moondrop Space Travel and look a little bit less cumbersome. Whilst the stem is shorter than the HT05 Melobuds from QCY, the overall size is pretty similar. Both of these models do look a little bit more boxy, especially around the top of the stem when you compare them with the sleek Apple AirPods Pro, for example. The W1 ANC are unquestionably really comfortable, but when it comes to stability, I think Haylou have let themselves down a little bit with the supplied tips. The stock tips aren't wide enough to give you a good seal, and they're not flat enough to give you particularly stable fit. Put it this way, if medium tips, i.e. the ones that come factory fitted, usually fit your ears, you'll definitely want to size up. Not only does this improve the fit and the stability, but it also has an impact on active noise cancellation and the sound delivery. I'll touch on that a little bit more later on. Using flatter, wider tips will reduce the amount of space between the top of the earbud and your conker. Get this right and you're left with a smart and well-fitting set of earbuds. Like the Moondrop Space Travel and the QCY HT05 Melobuds, the controls are non-capacitive, which means if you're wearing them with a hood or a beanie, for example, you might find some accidental touches. They are pretty responsive though, and it's great to see that Haylou have included the ability to customize those touch controls within the Haylou Sound app. You've got full control over everything pretty much other than single tap. Whilst they don't come with volume control out of the box, you can adjust them if you so wish. The inability to customize single tap though means that you will probably have to compromise on something that you'll end up having to reach for your phone for. Now, I mentioned earlier the problem with the stock tips and the impact that they have on noise isolation and sound. And this is felt straight away when you test the active noise cancellation. Outdoors, despite having that up to 45 dB strength, it doesn't feel anything like as strong as that. It wasn't until I switched to larger tips, took them out again, and realized it was the tips that were causing a problem. And in fact, active noise cancellation isn't too bad. It certainly isn't anything like as strong as your market leaders or even your stronger mid-tier options like the Earfun Air Pro 3 and Soundpeat's Air 4 Pro. From a budget perspective, this is competing with the likes of the QCY HT05, the Moondrop Space Travel, perhaps the Baseus M2S. And aside the Moondrop Space Travel, I think it does fall a little short of all of those models. You do have an adaptive mode, although I found that this could reduce that ANC potency even further. So I just stuck to ANC left on all of the time. But if you do want to use adaptive ANC, the only way to access it is through the ANC menu in the Haylou Sound app. And using it in different scenarios outdoors, it will dull the effect of traffic when you're walking through a busy street, something like that. However, if you're using them on an underground train or even a normal train, that kind of commuting sound is a little bit too much for it to cope with. And despite using the 6 mics, transparency mode likewise isn't quite as good as I would hope it would be. You can definitely hear a layer of white noise, and whilst conversations nearby, you should be able to discern every word of those. If you're trying to have a conversation with someone a little bit further away, trying to communicate, you may not necessarily be able to make out every word. For budget TWS, ANC is certainly okay, but if that is the sole thing that you're looking for, strong ANC, then the W1 ANC isn't going to be the right one for you. But let's face it, even though they included ANC in the name, the star of the show here was always going to be the hybrid driver arrangement of a single Knowles balanced armature and a 10mm dynamic driver. The original W1 had quite a clinical sound without any real dynamism whatsoever, but that definitely isn't the case with the W1 ANC. As you can see from the frequency response measurements, it is an energetic V-shaped sound with plenty of emphasis this time on those lower frequencies. Despite the sub-bass tailing off ever so slightly, there's still good depth to that lower frequency response. You've got an average 5 dB elevation with the bass boost centered around 80 Hz. I wouldn't say it quite has that subwoofer style sound, but the peak at around 40k means the bass can sound boomy with certain music genres. But in combination with the treble lift, which gives good definition to your percussion, styles that rely heavily on kick drums such as EDM and house music sound really nice and punchy. The heavily recessed mid-range means you lose a little bit of musicality, but for genres like R&B and rock, where you're relying very much on the harmonics of the bass and a strong lower mid-range response to accurately portray those deeper male vocals. Now, out of the box, it doesn't play quite as nicely with those genres as much as it does with, as I mentioned previously, EDM, but also pop as well. The elevation at around 12k helps these genres sound particularly open and airy. There's no custom equalizer in the Haylou Sound app, but you do have a bunch of different presets. Soft and classical are worth a listen because they do edge down the trebles a little bit, so if you're noticing some sibilance, then that can help you there. And if somehow the bass isn't enough for you, you've got a bass preset option as well. This closes the sounding a little bit and makes it sound less open. In comparison to other popular buds in that lower budget category, let's start with the Moondrop Space Travel. This has a more balanced linear sound signature with a lower differential between the frequency ranges. It makes them a bit more versatile than the W1 ANC, although not as energetic and fun sounding. Whilst the MST generally sound more natural, the boosted upper mid-range and the reined in lower frequency response can leave certain genres, especially female vocals, sounding a bit shrill. If you prefer a more reference style sound, the MST are probably a better option, but if you like a bassier, more energetic sound, then the W1 ANC will be the pick for you out of those two. The QCY HT05 Melobuds is another popular choice around this price category, and it's another one that has a slightly more natural sound similar to the Moondrop Space Travel, although the bass harmonics and texture are better on this model, and the upper mids are a little bit smoother as well, giving you a more natural sound to your female vocals. The HT05 has more sparkle than the MST, but not as much as the W1 ANC, which is helped by that Knowles balanced Armature driver, giving you a lot of texture to your trebles. Again, the bass is much boomier on the W1 ANC, so if you prefer your sound signature sculpted for fun, then the Haylou is the better bet here. Whereas if you prefer a more natural, warmer, more balanced musical sound, HT05 is the pick of the bunch under $30.
And now we move on to testing the call quality. This is how you can expect the W1 ANC to perform indoors on a call where you've been able to reduce all the environmental sounds around you. Let's say you're working from home, nobody else is in, you've shut the windows, you're doing an important presentation for work, or maybe you're doing an interview. This is how you can expect it to perform in that kind of environment. Next, I'm going to take you through a few call samples, both indoors and outdoors, so you can hear how the W1 ANC perform when there's added complexity, such as environmental sound, in the scene. So we're testing the Haylou W1 ANC for indoor call performance in a busy coffee shop. So this is how you can expect these earbuds to perform on your calls in commensurate busy indoor environments. So if you're using them, maybe at school or college, in a corridor or busy office, something like that, this is how you can expect them to perform. So we're testing the outdoor call quality on the Haylou W1 ANC. Walking through a town centre, it's Christmas shopping, so you've got quite a few people walking around, you've got the noise of people chatting nearby, just general shopper sounds really that you would come to expect when you're out and about and looking to pick up some Christmas shopping. And this is trying to replicate how the Haylou W1 sounds, or the Haylou W1 ANC, sorry, on the daily commute when you've got a mixture of wind and traffic noises getting in the way of your calls. Maybe you're looking for a set of earbuds that you can use to make or take calls or send voice notes or whatever when you're on the daily commute, when you're heading to work, school, to college, etc. This is how you can expect them to perform in this scenario.
In terms of other features, there's no classical multi-point connectivity, although Haylou have featured the ability to connect to two simultaneous devices just using a single earbud. Theoretically, how you're meant to do this is take one bud out and connect it to one device, and then take the other bud out and connect it to your secondary device. However, it wasn't something I could get working, so maybe this is something that Haylou will bring with a future firmware update. Latency on this model is pretty good, and you've also got a low latency mode which you can't strangely access through the app. Instead, you have to access it through gestures, and again, this is something that you can configure through the app in the section where you customize your controls. Connectivity is also very good. It's a Bluetooth 5.3 ready chipset. I had no dropouts or attenuation issues whatsoever in indoor and outdoor busy scenes. Battery life on this model isn't too bad as well. So you've got no high-res codecs draining that extra battery life. It's AAC and SBC only. And with active noise cancellation on, I did various different tests, some with an increased volume of calls, some where I switched between the different EQ modes a little bit more, and every time I got no less than 4 hours 20 minutes and no more than 5 hours 10 minutes. Averaging out around 4.5 hours, this is pretty much on par with most of the budget earbuds that are giving you active noise cancellation, but it's a case really that is more impressive than the single use battery life here, giving you an additional 6 charges. So potentially you get in between sort of 28 and maybe even above 30 hours total playtime. I think this is a pretty good performance for a sub $40 set. So to summarise, a very solid release from Haylou. The W1 ANC has a punchy, energetic sound, and it does all of the basics pretty well. Just make sure to factor in that you'll probably have to switch those tips out in order to make the most of the active noise cancellation and the sound. Do give the video a like if you found it useful, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.